And we're live. Hi there, everybody. Welcome to our open book. Very good to be with you. Those of you who subscribe to my newsletter and who've seen it today uh, may know that I wrote about late night television. Hi there, SR. Hi there, Mr. Dickens. Hi there, Maggie. Hi there, Dorothy. Hi there, Diana, Karen, Linda Grimm. Um, no less than Conan O'Brien says that the format is done with. You know what happened at Stephen Colbert and CBS, and then several observers of the industry say that when Jimmy Kimmel and I don't want to
It was a
name
good
them.
newsletter.
Yeah, it was a good newsletter. Just the format because they're not because, in fact, of the very technology we're on and streaming and sharing technologies, they're just not the audience for late night that there used to be. Um, One more example of how broadcasting is no longer broad. As I think I said at the conclusion of the newsletter,
By the way, if people are not getting your newsletter, how can they get it? Where do
people
they
are not
sign
getting
up?
the newsletter.
It's
I send out a
weekly.
link on X where they can sign up.
It's weekly. It comes out on Thursday, and it's very
I'll
good.
put a link to it in your Substack notes feed.
Perfect.
Whatever that means, I will do it. Eating up in Portland, Mark. Good to know that. And Karen Smith says I am going to bed earlier.
Yeah, we
Karen,
all
we
are.
don't need to know everything, but yes. In any event, but I had some wonderful memories of late night television experiences. One of the original hosts of late night, and he was wonderful. Jack Paar. Oh, look! I just noticed this picture of him
Oh,
working on the book as he types in his pool, and I believe it was Bronxville, New York, on his nice typewriter. What happened to that? And I interviewed him a number of years ago before he died. Obviously, he turned out to be a fan. And I got this.
oh, that's so nice. To Scott Simon, who makes Saturday morning the best of days. Jack Paar.
Isn't that nice?
Very nice.
So he would have people come on his show not with anything to publicize or push, but just because they were funny and great conversationalists. I'm going to read a bit from his recollections of Oscar Levant, who was, of course, famed as a pianist, but kind of reinvented himself as a wit. And let me just read, because the chapter is called The Most. Yes, Maggie and Carolina, the Ed McMahon here. Chapter 20, The Most Unforgettable Character I've Met. Jack Paar writes, Oscar Levant, a devout hypochondriac who's carried on a lifelong romance with himself, has probably gotten more mileage out of being miserable than anyone since Job. Although he was a brilliant concert pianist, he's probably better known for his barbed wit and the number and variety of his ailments. It was Sigmund Freud who pioneered the exploration of the troubled mind, but it remained for Oscar to introduce the do-it-yourself system to psychiatry and make neurosis much more popular. Levant is like so many things, it's difficult to remember them all, but unfortunately, he has a retentive memory. He's parlayed a good memory and a bad disposition into fame. At a time when striving for togetherness is a national trend, Oscar is the leading apostle of apartness. He hates flowers, telephones, the number 13, the city of Pittsburgh, fresh air, barbers, hummingbirds, Disneyland, cheerfulness, and exercise. My only exercise, he told me, is groveling, brooding, and mulling. He also dislikes practically all people, including me. One of the few people he admires is Oscar, although he concedes his devotion to himself is not widely shared. There are two schools of thought about me. He admits people either dislike me or hate me. All of the foregoing may not be ideal qualifications for a scoutmaster or a member of moral rearmament, but they make for a sprightly television guest, which Oscar was in our show when we did it from Hollywood. I'd hardly checked into a hotel in Beverly Hills when the phone rang, and it was Oscar. I never talk on the phone, he said in a querulous, high-pitched voice. If you want me on your show, you have to come see me. But you called me. I know, but I hate telephones. You'll have to come see me. Jack Paar said, ordinarily, I don't meet ahead of time with people who are going to appear on the show, but it was obvious that in Oscar's case, it would be a wise precaution. Because with him, living is just a sideline. All of his life, he has been fighting off a case of wellness. My visit with him turned out to be a 2-hour discourse by Oscar on himself. It was like going to the zoo in mating season, but having only one animal turn up. I agreed to meet him at his home in Beverly Hills. Oscar and his wife, Jane, a frequent and unabashed sparring partner, live in a 10-room Spanish-style house in a fashionable street. A house like Oscar gives the air of falling apart, although not as ostentatiously as its owner. When I rang the bell, I opened slightly. The maid said, "It's Mr. Paar." "Who let him in?" Oscar demanded. "I want nobody in this house but the family." He then shuffled in, shook hands limply, bared his teeth in a wolfish grin, and collapsed into a chair. "I've lost my voice, and my memory is completely gone." He then proceeded to remember everything he'd done over the past 30 years and tell it all to me. Although I'd been warned of the precarious state of Oscar's health, I began to wonder whether Blue Cross would cover us if he collapsed on the show. "I may have a heart attack at any moment," he confided, clutching his side. As he rambled on, it was plain to see Oscar's pessimistic diagnosis of his health was not exaggerated. He slumped in his chair like a deflated balloon, his rumpled blue suit hanging loosely on his sagging figure. His sallow, moody features giving him the appearance of a dissipated satyr. His full lips looking as if they might have developed from kissing the mirror. "I am an epic in bloat," he remarked. Oscar made me feel as positive as Norman Vincent Peale. "Ralph Edwards wants to have me on This Is Your Life," Oscar said, "but he couldn't find a single friend of mine." Oscar puffed gloomily on cigarettes and gulped cups of black coffee, which he drinks about 60 a day. "We'll see. I'm not that far behind." "I tried drinking liquor once," he said. "I drank steadily for an entire year, but it didn't take." Pacing nervously around the room, Levant spoke of his old days in New York before he became famous. "I was a penthouse beachcomber," he recalled. "Everything I touched turned to pennies." During this time, he lived in the apartment of George and Ira Gershwin, which he calls the Penn Station of Talent. He dropped in one night and remained a year. At the end of that time, after finishing dinner one night, Oscar jumped up and blurted, "Forgive me for eating and running," and disappeared. During this time of doldrums, Oscar also stayed with George Kaufman, the playwright. After one visit, Mr. Kaufman told him, "I thought you'd be embarrassed about the servants, so I tipped them each $3 and said it was from you." "Why didn't you make it 5? He demanded indignantly. "I don't want them thinking I'm cheap." When Oscar held forth, his 3 daughters, whom he secretly adores, drifted in and out of the room. "I haven't spoken to my 3 children in weeks," he declared. "Have I?" he demanded of one of the girls. "Whatever you say, Daddy," she smiled sweetly. "Gives them a good reason to hate me," he sneered. It's very therapeutic. Oscar's lengthy discourse convinced me that his awesome reputation as a tireless talker was well earned. "A conversation with Oscar, Leo DeRocher once told me, is like trying to argue with 4 umpires at once." Once Aaron Copland, the composer, after listening to Oscar for hours, got up to leave. "Why, Aaron?" Oscar cried. "You're developing into an egomaniac. You used to be able to listen to me all night." Another time, after Oscar had harangued for an hour, Paul Stewart, the actor, told a brief anecdote. "If there's anything I can't stand," Oscar said as he strode out, "it's a monologist." Oscar's reminiscences to me were the longest sustained vocal display since Fidel Castro's last fireside chat. His wife, June, slipped in occasionally to refuel our coffee cups. She, like Oscar, has her own local TV show in Los Angeles. "We're the only couple with his and her TV show," she said proudly. Years of listening to Oscar have wrought a considerable metamorphosis. "The first 5 years I was married to Oscar, I never opened my mouth," she said. "The next 5, I tried to break through. Now they can't shut me up." Although Oscar is a fearsome talker, he sometimes lapses into unaccountable silences on his show. One night after he'd played a number on the piano, his guest, the pugilist Art Aragon, was brought on. Oscar slumped in his chair and seemed to fall asleep. "Dear, your guest is here," June said quietly. Oscar sighed. "Wake me up when he leaves." After Oscar and I had talked for hours, I was still trying to say a few words about what I thought we should talk about on the program. My frustrated efforts to penetrate Oscar's sound barrier reminded me of the occasion when George Solitaire, the ticket broker, sat with Oscar at Toots Shores and then left to join a friend at another table. "What were you and Oscar talking about?" the friend asked. "You don't talk with Oscar," Solitaire said. "You just punctuate him with grunts." Oscar's admiration for himself is equaled only by his dislike for other people. He revels in insult. "I'm the verbal vampire of television," he told his friend Maurice Zoloteau. "Groucho Marx, another master of the insult, has refused to go on Levant's show. I understand Groucho's hesitance," Oscar says. "I once refused to go with George Bernard Shaw for the same reason." Oscar was at his most insulting when he finally appeared on our show. He shuffled on stage, sat down like an accordion, inhaling, and began aiming jibes at everyone, including me. "I'd like to welcome you tonight," he announced, "on behalf of Southern California and all the outpatients of mental hygiene clinics. One of these nights," he promised me, "I'm going to come on your show in a white tie and straitjacket." I noticed that his hands were trembling. "What is this?" he growled. "Am I supposed to do surgery?" As he talked, Oscar clutched his heart, gulped coffee, and complained about the world in general, particularly people. "I'm like Ike," he said. "Once I make up my mind, I'm full of indecision." He poked fun at Eddie Fisher marrying Elizabeth Taylor. "How high can you stoop?" he asked. Oscar seemed to take particular glee in insulting people from our show. "I took Elsa Maxwell to a masquerade party once," he said, "and when I tore off her mask, I found I'd beheaded her. Oh, God." He declared that Zsa Zsa Gabor had discovered the secret of perpetual middle age and that she was doing social work among the very rich. I reminded Oscar that Zsa Zsa had said Oscar was brilliant, but that there was a fine line between genius and insanity. He growled, "I've managed to overcome that fine line." I mentioned Dinah Shore, who was renowned for her wholesome sweetness. Oscar said I never watch her. Doctor's orders. He also told me of the time he and his wife were guests at a large formal dinner at the White House. As they were saying goodnight to President and Mrs. Truman, Oscar turned to June and said in a resigned voice, "Now we have to have them over to dinner." That's actually pretty funny. Oscar needled me about what he called my air of humility. "I'm no more humble," I replied, "than my talents require." At one point, I called him dear friend, then remembering his aversion to friendship, I added, "Does that offend you?" He said, "You're getting close." Despite the verbal carnage wreaked by Oscar, critics hailed his appearance on the show as one of the highlights of the year. I invited him back for a return bout. He came to see me in my suite at the Beverly Hilton, found me watching his local TV show, which he taped earlier. "How can you watch it? I can't stand it." "Turn it off. I feel ill." Slumped in a chair while I plied him with coffee and sympathy. He continued to demand noisily that I turn off his program. Suddenly, I discovered why. While I sympathetically poured him coffee, Oscar was on my TV insulting me. The next day, he called and said he would be unable to come on the show unless I could send him some sleeping pills. My emissary had scarcely returned and explained this to me than the phone rang. "It was Oscar. Your friend didn't come to the house," he said. "We have an old tradition at our house that no one is ever turned away at our threshold. He must come back." "Now that you have crossed the threshold," Levant said grandly, "it has been my pleasure. Goodbye." He was a troubled guy, but could be very funny, and a great pianist in his time. I really like Jack Paar. It was really a big thing for me to interview him. And if you're able to find my newsletter, wonder what happens if you just type in Google search Scott Simon newsletter. No. Somebody's
Depends
doing
on
that.
you get
Let's ask
you
our
do-
Ed McMahon.
So you do get Scott's thoughts,
Yeah.
but
No way to sign up for the
no,
newsletter.
you can, but it gets a little messy.
All right.
Do that for today, friends.
All right. My mother actually brought me out of bed once to watch because she said Richard Burton was on Jack Paar, and he was telling a story about performing Hamlet. And they had said to him, "You must be very good." Did you read this in the newsletter?
Mm-hmm.
Did you see the clip though?
Oh, I read the newsletter. Yes, of course.
And you must be very good because the old man's in the audience tonight, and they knew that to mean Winston Churchill. And Richard Burton came out, and he was playing Hamlet, and he noticed that when the big speeches came, Churchill would recite them along with him. Churchill came backstage after the performance. They were introduced, and Richard Burton said, and he turned to me and said, "Lord Hamlet, may I use your bathroom?" He said it was a big moment. So that, there's had shows where people were just Genevieve, a very funny French singer, would come on the show. Hermione Gingold, who was very funny. It was, I would sneak out of bed, and sometimes my mother would say, "Okay, come on out." So thanks for being with us tonight in our open book. Tomorrow we're going to have our promo, which I will be doing from the office. And we'll see you later. Take care. Bye-bye.